The tree line of the northern forests ended abruptly, as if cut by a knife. Beyond lay the severed lands, a vast arid expanse of red rock and scrub brush that separated the fallen north from the golden empire of the south. Kaelen halted, his boots kicking up a puff of red dust. He shielded his eyes against the glare. The air here was different, dry, hot, and carrying the scent of sage and heated stone. Elara stood beside him. She had wrapped a strip of linen around her head to cover her right eye, the mechanical gold one. "It's bright," she murmured, touching the bandage. "I can see the heat lines in the air, like veins." Kaelen adjusted his pack. They were refugees now, walking into a kingdom that likely wanted them dead. They walked for 2 days, rationing the water Kara pulled from deep underground aquifers. The landscape was dotted with the remains of refugee caravans, wagons abandoned, belongings scattered, but no bodies. "Where are the people?" Tibbs asked from Kalen's back, chewing on a dried root. "Taken," Kara said, her staff tapping the hard-pan earth, or turned. They crested a ridge and saw it, the sun wall, a massive fortification stretching horizon to horizon, built of white sandstone and topped with golden banners. It was the shield of the south, and the gates were shut. A shantytown had sprung up at the base of the great gate. Thousands of refugees from the border villages were camped there, pleading for entry. Kaelen moved through the crowd, keeping his hood up. The desperation was palpable. People were starving, dehydrated, pounding on the iron gates. "Open! The silence is coming," a man screamed, holding up a sick child. The guards on the wall, clad in the gleaming solar plate of the Empress's legion, did not move. They held crossbows trained on the crowd. Kaelen felt a cold knot in his stomach. The South wasn't ignorant of the threat. They were quarantining it, and they were on the wrong side of the quarantine. Kaelen approached the gatehouse, pulling his courier seal from his tunic. It was tarnished but authentic. "King's courier," he shouted up at the captain on the wall. "I carry a Priority 1 dispatch for the Empress. The North has fallen." The captain looked down, his face hidden by a sun mask. "The North is quarantined." The captain's voice boomed, amplified by a horn. "No entry. Courier or king, you rot with the rest." Kaelen gritted his teeth. "I have vital intelligence on the enemy." "The only intelligence we need is that you carry the plague," the captain retorted. "Back away, or we loose the bolts." A bolt struck the ground inches from Kalen's boot, a warning shot. Kaelen backed away slowly, hands raised. He returned to the shadows of a rocky outcrop where the others waited. "They won't open," he said grimly. "They think we're infected." "We are," Elara said softly, touching her bandaged eye. "In a way." "We need another path," Kara said. "The wall ends at the Whispering Canyons to the west. It is a natural barrier, treacherous but unguarded." Kaelen nodded. He knew the stories. The canyons drove men mad, but madness was better than the slow death of the refugee camp. They moved west, skirting the wall until the flat desert broke apart into a labyrinth of deep fissures, the Whispering Canyons. The wind here didn't blow. It circulated, trapped between the narrow sandstone walls, creating a constant, low-frequency hum. As they descended into the first cut, the sound hit them. It wasn't just noise, it was a vibration that rattled the bones. Tibbs clamped his hands over his large ears. "The air is biting me," he squeaked. Kara slammed her staff. "Focus on the earth," she commanded. "The stone is still, the air is a liar." Deeper in, the acoustics became weaponized. The wind sounded like voices. Kaelen heard his name. Kaelen, failure. Kaelen, coward. He shook his head, trying to clear it. Elara stopped. She pulled the bandage off her eye, the mechanical gold iris word focusing. "It's not just wind," she said, staring at the empty air. "There are patterns in the sound waves, standing waves. Someone constructed this canyon to be an amplifier." She looked at the walls. "It's a security system. Sonic confusion." Night fell early in the depths of the canyon. They made camp in a small alcove. Tibbs was busy. He was tearing strips off his leather tunic and stuffing them with moss and wax he found in his pockets. "Earplugs," he announced, handing them out. "Grade A goblin engineering." Kaelen took them gratefully. The voices were getting louder in the dark. He looked at Elara. She was staring into the fire, her gold eye reflecting the flames. "Does the eye sleep?" he asked. "No," she said. "It records. It's recording you right now. It measures your heat, your heartbeat." Kaelen took first watch. The earplugs dampened the whispers but couldn't stop them entirely. Around midnight, he saw movement down the canyon floor. A figure walking toward them. It wore the tabard of the King's Guard. It was Captain Horik, his old commander, dead for 10 years. Horik walked with a limp, dragging a broken sword. "You left the post, Kaelen," the figure whispered, though it was 50 yards away. "You dropped the letter." Kaelen stood up, drawing his dagger. "You're not real," he muttered. "The canyon plays tricks." The figure lunged, moving with impossible speed. Kaelen struck, but his dagger passed through smoke. The figure laughed, a screech of wind, and reformed behind him. "Your guilt is heavy, courier." Kaelen spun, slashing again. Kara woke up. She didn't use magic. She threw a rock. It hit the ghost in the chest. There was a metallic clank. The ghost flickered and turned static, revealing a small floating metal drone draped in a hologram. "Not a ghost," Kara said, standing up. "Technology. Projector." Kaelen stared at the drone as it buzzed and fell to the ground. Tibbs scrambled over to it. "Southern Tech," he chirped, prying it open. "Surveillance drone, old model. Someone is watching the canyon." "The Empress?" Elara asked. "Or the Silence?" Kaelen kicked the drone apart. "If it's the Silence, they've adapted. They're using our own fears against us." Suddenly, the whispers in the canyon stopped. The silence that followed was worse. It was the heavy, pressurized silence of an ambush. From the canyon walls, shapes detached themselves. They weren't ghosts this time. They were soldiers, but they wore armor made of gray slate, and their movements were silent. The silent stalkers. They rappled down the walls on ropes of woven shadow. "Defensive circle," Kaelen roared. He grabbed his star steel dagger, his only weapon against them. Kara raised her staff, pulling slabs of stone from the ground to form low walls. Elara stood in the center, her gold eye spinning, calculating trajectories. The fight was a brawl in the dirt. Kaelen tackled a stalker, driving his dagger into its neck. The stalker didn't bleed. It crumbled into gray dust. "Dustmen!" Kaelen shouted. "They're constructs!" A stalker lunged at Elara. She didn't use magic. She ducked, using the data from her eye to predict the strike perfectly, and tripped the attacker. Tibbs jumped on its chest, jamming a sonic grenade, his own invention, into the creature's helm. "Eat noise!" The grenade went off with a high-pitched whine. The construct shattered. They fought off the first wave, but more were coming. "They are guarding something," Kara said, breathing hard. "The earth here, it is hollow." She pointed to a fissure in the canyon wall that was hidden by a holographic projection of rock, the drone's larger cousin. Kaelen ran to the wall and passed his hand through the rock face. It rippled like water. "A hidden base," he said, "inside the canyon wall." "We go in," Elara said. "It's the only way out of the kill box." They stepped through the illusion into a sleek, excavated tunnel. The walls were lined with violet crystals, silence tech. This wasn't a southern outpost. It was a forward operating base for the invasion. "They've been here for months," Kaelen realized. "Maybe years, tunneling under the wall." They moved stealthily down the corridor. They passed a room filled with pods. Inside the pods were people, refugees. They were asleep, tubes connected to their heads. "They're harvesting memories," Elara whispered, horrified, "to make the dustmen act human." "We can't save them," Kara said, her voice heavy. "Not now. We have to find the command center." They reached the end of the corridor. It opened into a massive vertical shaft. In the center, suspended by gravity beams, was a spire of black metal. It pulsed with a rhythmic signal. "Thump, thump." "It's a jammer," Tibbs whispered. "It's scrambling the communications along the border. That's why the South doesn't know the North has fallen. They think it's just radio silence." "If we destroy it," Kaelen said, "the silence breaks. The South will get the messages." He looked at the spire. It was guarded by floating drones and elite dustmen. "I need to get to the core," Elara said. "I can interface with it. I can invert the signal. Instead of jamming, I can make it scream." "That will bring every guard in the base down on us," Kaelen said. Elara looked at him with her mismatched eyes. "Then buy me time, courier." Kaelen kicked the door to the gantry open and charged, screaming a war cry to draw attention. It worked. The drones turned, red eyes flashing. Dustmen poured onto the walkways. Kaelen engaged them on the narrow bridge, using the environment, kicking them off the edge, using their own bodies as shields. Kara stood behind him, raising walls of stone to block blaster fire. Tibbs scurried underneath the grating, wiring trip mines. Elara sprinted for the central console at the base of the spire. A figure blocked her path. It wasn't a dust man. It was a human woman, wearing the robes of a southern mage, but her eyes were stitched shut. A whisperer, a traitor who had given herself to the silence. "The signal must not stop," the woman said, her voice echoing in Elara's mind. She raised her hand and a wave of psychic force hit Elara, knocking her to her knees. The whisperer assaulted Elara's mind. Images of despair, of a cold, silent universe, flooded Elara's consciousness. "Give up. Order is peace." Elara gritted her teeth. Her mechanical eyes spun, analyzing the psychic attack. Pattern detected. Frequency 40 Hz. "I don't want peace," Elara shouted. "I want noise." She fired a counterpulse from her chest plate, a raw blast of white noise. It hit the whisperer like a physical blow, disrupting her concentration. Kaelen saw Elara struggle. He broke away from the melee, taking a plasma bolt to the shoulder plate. He didn't stop. He threw his dagger. It sailed past Elara and struck the whisperer in the chest. The mage gasped, her connection to the void severed. She collapsed. Kaelen reached Elara, pulling her up. "Do it! I'll hold the bridge!" He turned, sword, scavenged from a dustman in hand, facing the wave of reinforcements. Elara jammed her hand into the crystal interface. Her gold eye synced with the machine. She saw the code of the silence, complex, beautiful, cold. She rewrote it. She inverted the waveform. The spire stopped pulsing. It whined. Then it let out a screech, a massive piercing audio signal that blasted through the canyon and across the radio waves. "The north has fallen. The silence is here." The spire began to collapse. The overload was melting the gravity beams. "We have to go," Elara screamed, pulling her hand free. The entire facility shook. The dustmen froze, their control signal severed by the broadcast. They crumbled into piles of gray ash. The enemies were gone, but the cave was coming down. "The elevator!" Tibbs yelled, pointing to a service lift on the far side of the silo. They scrambled into the lift and hit the ascent button. The lift shot up just as the gantry collapsed into the abyss below. They rose through the rock, the sound of the exploding base muted by the stone. They burst out into the surface air, the canyon floor. But they weren't safe. The explosion caused a landslide. The canyon walls were caving in. They outran the dust cloud, collapsing on a flat mesa overlooking the canyon. They watched as a plume of violet smoke rose from the fissure. The jammer was gone. The signal was out. Kaelen lay on his back, staring at the stars. "We did it," he wheezed. "They know." Elara sat up, scanning the horizon with her gold eye. "Yes," she said. "They know. Look." From the direction of the sun wall, a fleet of airships approached. These were not the rusted hulks of the Ash Raiders. These were the golden armadas of the Empress. Sleek, white hulls, solar sails catching the moonlight, engines humming with a perfect, harmonious chord. They were beautiful, and they were training their weapons on the mesa. A dropship descended, engines blowing the red dust into a storm. It landed 30 yards away. A ramp lowered. Soldiers marched out. They were the Sun Spears, elite guards in Orium power armor, wielding halberds tipped with plasma. They didn't look like rescuers. They formed a perimeter. A figure walked out from the ranks, an Inquisitor wearing a white mask and red robes. "Identify," the Inquisitor commanded, his voice amplified. Kaelen stepped forward, dropping his weapon. "Kaelen, King's courier, this is the retinue of the Architect. We destroyed the silence jammer. We are the reason you have the signal." The Inquisitor looked at Elara. He looked at her mechanical eye, her translucent skin, the chest plate. He pulled a device from his robe. It beeped. "Target confirmed, Class A corruption signature." "She is not corrupt," Kaelen shouted. "She is the cure. She destroyed the North's anchor." "She is carrying the enemy's code," the Inquisitor said coldly. "The protocol is clear. All carriers are to be contained." He signaled the troops. "Secure the asset, liquidate the others." The soldiers charged. Kaelen grabbed his dagger, but he knew it was over. They were exhausted, wounded, and outgunned. Elara fell to her knees, hands behind her head. "Don't fight," she screamed at Kaelen. "They will kill you. Surrender!" Kaelen hesitated. A soldier smashed the butt of a halberd into his skull. Darkness took him. The last thing he saw was Elara being dragged toward the dropship, the Inquisitor placing a suppression collar around her neck. The South had answered the call, but they hadn't come to save them. They had come to harvest them.